Hey everyone, it's Andy here from the Commander's Brew. You know us right here building new and cool and fun EDH decks every week. This week it's Willowdusk from the new C21 decks. And I thought this one was kind of whatever at first, but it turns out to be a really cool deck, so check it out. All right, we're dealing with Willowdusk Essence Seer from the I want to say Golgari, but it's not Golgari. It's Witherbloom C21 decks. And like I mentioned in the intro there, if you're watching on YouTube, I was not really that excited to look at this commander when I first saw it. When I even talked to the Discord, we were talking about some other. I know I wanted to do Witherbloom deck this week, but yeah, Willowdusk just didn't really seem like it was anyone's first choice. But once we started talking about it, and once we started, thinking about some of the cards and things like that, yeah, absolutely, it got more and more exciting. And we have a deck here that I am definitely putting together in real life. And it's kind of a weird way that it happened. So I'll read Willowdusk for you first. Actually, you know what? Sean, why don't you read Willowdusk for me?
Happy to.
Well, I just do a quick adjustment here. Okay, go ahead.
Sure. So Willowdusk Essence Seer is a 3/3 legendary Dryad Druid. Say that 5 times fast. Costs you 1 black-green. I want to say Golgari, but it's a Witherbloom for this plane. Yeah. But like, we've been using Golgari on non-Ravnica planes forever.
That's true.
So I don't see why that's not incorrect to continue.
That's true. That's true.
Anyway, he's got one ability. She looks like a bit of a crone.
Yeah, it was a bit of a crone.
They've got one ability, 1 tap, choose another target creature, put a number of +1/+1 counters on it, equal to the amount of life you gained this turn, or the amount of life you lost this turn, whichever is greater. Activate only as a sorcery. Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, right?
So so even if you end up back at 0, gaining some life and then losing that life, the game knows.
No.
So you still get a bunch of counts.
No, I don't believe that is how it works, in fact. In fact, I think it's the opposite. So I am.
Wait a minute.
I'm just.
But if you gain 10 life, the game knows you gained 10 life. And if you immediately lose that 10 life, cards that say at the end of turn, if you gain 3 life, trigger this thing, will still trigger.
But if you gain 10 life, then lose 10 life, and then try to activate Willowdusk, I'm pretty sure that you don't get to do anything. It doesn't really matter because it doesn't really come up, honestly. So sure. I could very well be wrong.
I think that is because we've run into this with other like life decks that like reset life totals and exchanging life totals.
Yeah, and that counts as life
The game
gain.
knows you gained life. The net is 0, but you went through a life gain and a life loss. So I still think you get that.
Honestly, if that's the way the rule works, it's even better. It just makes it even that much better. So honestly, great. But it didn't even really come up. And I did think about it, and I was like, oh, I'm a little wishy-washy on that rule. I'm not really sure how that works. But again, because it didn't really make a difference, it didn't matter. So basically, Willowdusk, all about this whole life loss, life gain thing. We can make something else really huge, right? I have, if you look back, I can't remember what episode it is. It's like, I don't know, probably in the 250 somewhere at this point. Grevin. When Grevin came out, Grevin's another commander that cares about losing a bunch of life, and it's really good if you can put a bunch of life gain in there because you want to gain that life back, and Grevin himself has a really fun time with life gain. But I've had this problem with my Grevin deck that after I built it and played it a few times, it's really like all or nothing, all in, and you feel like when you're playing that deck, you can't really sit around and wait because people are afraid of Grevin, first of all, so they'll just come for you. So you feel like when you have the chance, you've got to strike, right? You got to strike while the iron's hot. So if your deck doesn't exactly come together perfectly, you can end up attacking someone with Grevin, killing them, sure, because that's just the way that card works, But then you're left with like a really low life total, and then your opponents can just take advantage of that and take you out of the game. It's one of those classic problems that commander decks have when they're really aggressive. We can take out one, maybe two players, but to win the long game is a little harder, right? Well, Willowdusk takes a lot of the same black cards that Greven uses, because Greven's red-black. And she uses green and black to do very similar things, but it's like just slowed down a tiny bit and is not nearly as scary as a Greven deck is. So I wanted to point that out, because myself having this Greven deck, I'm for sure just taking it apart and turning it into Willowdusk now, because that's my own experience. I mean, you may have a Greven deck and it's going great for you. You know, I'm not saying you have to change it or anything. I'm just saying if you've experienced this problem, Willowdusk is a great other option. And that's why I'm so excited about it. And that's why I really end up liking this deck quite a bit. So
I love it.
Yeah. It's like less reckless, you know, it's like, it's a little more measured, you know. Willowdusk, she's like, okay, I'll make this thing bigger and then we'll, you know, but we have a plan with this deck. We have a real sort of, it doesn't have to work out exactly in this order, but it's pretty easy to, and it's therefore like the order we want to do things in. So setting the scene, talking about vegetables, talking about stuff that we want to have, like, you know, out going first. Losing life. If we're losing life in this deck, we're happy, because that means Willowdusk is going to be activated. Don't forget that her ability does cost 1. I sometimes would forget that and think it was just tapping. No, it does cost 1 colorless to do it. But we have some cool ways to lose life. 2 of the best ones in this deck, honestly, are Keen Duelist, which is a new card from this deck, I think. Is it?
Yes. It's from the... I don't know which deck it's from, but it is from the Commander 21 set.
Yeah.
It could be from the Silver Quill.
That's right. It could be. We don't know. It definitely depicts a Silver Quill person. Yes. So it's very possible it's from that deck.
Who, may I add, is perfectly lit.
Yes.
Like wherever they are, the lighting on... this person has found their light. They are on their mark. The lighting is just right.
What is the... Kudos to the grips on this... see on this shoot. They did a great job. Okay. Keen Duelist is a really cool card. It's 1 in a black for a 2/2. At the beginning of your upkeep, you and target opponent each reveal the top card of your library. You each lose life equal to the mana value of the card revealed by the other player. You each put the card you revealed into your hand. So It's like a Dark Confidant, but for you and the other person, and you reverse who it does it to. You do it to each other.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is cool. It's there's some politics involved here. You're going to make a friend with this card. You might make more than one friend, and a bunch of people might not want to remove this card from play, which is amazing. And depending on the game state, you might want to pick the person with the big bad, like 8 mana creatures in their deck. Or you might just want, you know, maybe she's an excellent 2-drop in a commander deck, or 3-drop or whatever, an early game play, because she's going to get you drawing those cards early. And at that point, you might not even have Willowdusk out. So you might be picking the person who's playing the, you know, I don't know, like the more of a cantrippy style deck with a lot of lower mana value cards. But she's a great start. And then we also have Dark Tutelage, because Dark Confidant costs a ton of money, and Dark Tutelage is cheap. So 2 in a black, It's an enchantment that just does the same thing. At the beginning of your upkeep, you reveal the top card of your library, you put that card in your hand, and you lose life equal to its converted mana cost. Well, now it says mana value.
We're living dangerous.
Yeah, and you know what? This is what we want to do, and it's a thing that black loves to do, is lose life and gain and draw cards. So we're going to play right into that. It's going to work out perfectly for us. So that's how we're going to lose a lot of life.
Nothing can go wrong.
Nothing's going to go wrong. It's going to be fine, John. Everything's going to be fine. But here's where it works out, okay? So let's say we Dark Tutelage, and we flip over like a medium spell, like a 5 mana spell, okay?
Okay.
We lose 5 life. We go down to 35 or something. But then we get to activate Willowdusk for a single mana and tap, and we're gonna put counters on one of these 2 creatures. Why don't you read them out?
Ooh, Vampire Nighthawk, 1 black, 2/3 Vampire Shaman, Flying Death Touch Lifelink, and the functional cousin, very similar, Nighthawk Scavenger, 1 black, Vampire Rogue, 1+*3 flying Death Touch lifelink. And then this 1+*3, the power is equal to 1 plus the number of card types among cards in your opponent's graveyards. So it can get much bigger than the Vampire Nighthawk.
Yeah.
So both excellent cards.
Both excellent cards, both flying Death Touch lifelinkers. So what we want to do is now put those counters from our life loss onto a life-linking creature, preferably
nice.
something with a little evasion. The Death Touch is bonus because people don't want to block it with something massive, which is great. So these two vampires can do us a lot of good by then being able to attack and just gain us that life right back. That's perfect. If we don't have one of the flying lifelink options, another little card that we have included here is Dothy Embrace. This is a very fun one. 2 and a black for enchantment that says pay black, target creature gains shadow until end of turn. So essentially can't be blocked, right? So this is going to be good
this
for...
This card's great.
It is great. You're going to be able to use this a lot and get, even if there's a flyer that you just want to get through for sure, you can still use the Dothy Embrace there. So...
Well, and this is an old school card. Mm-hmm. This is old border. It's back in from Tempest, where you can just do this on any creature. So this becomes a political move too, where hey, you got that cool creature that lets you draw cards if you hit. If you do something nice for me, I might make it unblockable. Shadow. I might give it shadow.
You can also be a real little stinker about it and be like, hey, if you do this for me, I'll give your creature shadow next turn. So when it attacks, and they'll be like, okay, nice deal. And then you get the benefits. You give their creature shadow, and then they attack.
They
you
go to
or
declare attacks.
Yeah, exactly. And then you give one of your creature shadow or one of your opponent's creature shadow also, and just be like, hey, I never said I wouldn't give another creature shadow.
Yeah,
you can't.
My favorite move would be like, thank you for the shadow. I declare attacks on player C. Then you're like, oh, hey, player C, before you declare blocks, do you want to do something for me and I can give your thing shadow too? So I can.
You can't be mad at that. That's politics. You know what I mean? I mean, you can be mad at it. That's not true. You can be mad at it, but you can't.
You can feel whatever you want.
You can feel whatever you want, but you can't tell them that they lied to you or something. You know what I mean?
No,
they didn't.
That is 100% true.
They didn't lie. They were just playing good politics. I'd respect that move.
A smart opponent would double check and make sure you don't use it on anyone.
Yeah.
Would put that clause in there.
You got to include that clause. You got to put that rider in there. That's a very important one. Yeah. So that's our kind of regular looking line of play. We got a bunch of other neat moves. So why don't we take a look at those neat moves?
Working on a neat moves. We're just going to take a second to handle a little bit of business. And the main point is, thanks for watching. If you want to see more of our comedic takes and offbeat decks, consider subscribing to our channel and hitting that bell to make sure you don't miss anything. And if you're loving our stuff and want to support further, the best way is to head over to patreon.com/commandersbrew. Find out how our generous patrons keep our show growing and how you can get in on the brewing action too through our Discord. Or, if you'd rather, just hang out and play some games with like-minded Commander players. Now, let's get back to those neat moves.
All right, so one of the things that I was thinking is that, you're not always going to be able to get even a good flying creature through, or we won't have our Dothy Embrace. So one way to just make sure we get that life gain back, because we got a lot of stuff in here that drains our life or takes our life away. So sometimes there's points where okay, I'm using Willowdusk and I need to be able to gain this life back. Well, in those cases, these next cards are going to be really helpful.
Sure. How about Mutant's Prey? This is a 1-minute instant. Target creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it fights target creature an opponent controls. Hopefully a huge lifelink Death Toucher. We will survive, gain some life, and take out a creature anyway. How about Ram Through? I love this card. 1 and a green instant from Ikoria. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. We've kind of nicknamed this a punch, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a fight because the opponent doesn't hit back. However, if the creature you control has trample, excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead. I've seen cases where this secretly is just like do 10 to a player.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. This can
Yeah.
totally be a kill in
Yeah.
this deck. You can play any number of cards and creatures in this deck. There's a couple that like you lose a third of your life. You lose half your life rounded up. All that kind of stuff. And then you put 50 counters on ram through because because when you gain a ton of life, those like lose a third of your life cards. They just get even crazier with the numbers. And then you play a ram through on that card with 50 counters on it. This actually happened in one of my test games. I got to ram through one of my like just random creatures had like 53 counters on it or something, and I just rammed through to his like 1/1 token and killed him.
Amazing.
Yeah, really fun.
I do love this card.
And I mean, I always forget about this card when I'm talking about fighting cards, and this time I remembered, though. It's Ulvenwald Tracker, which I'm sure is the opposite for a ton of people. They probably think of this one first. Just the single blue 1/1 human shaman that says 1 green, tap, target creature you control fights another target creature. So yeah, punching's better. Fighting is still pretty good, though, especially, you know, we're talking about lifelink. We're talking about gaining that life. It's a lot of fun. So if we're doing this, we're losing big chunks of life through some of those black cards, again, that take away a third of your life total, or everyone loses a third of their life, or whatever it is. We're going to be gaining back big chunks of life with this method, right? And if we're doing that, well, we might as well make other people lose that much life also with a little card like Veto Thorn of the Dusk Rose, 2 and a black for the 1/3 legendary vampire cleric. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. 3 black. Also, you can pay to make creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. That ability is not to be forgotten. That is actually a very good ability, because if you threw all the Willowdusk counters on just, again, some other creature, there's some tokens in this deck. Like, that's how you can gain your life back, is from Veto activating his ability. While we're at it, if we're gaining a ton of life, Sean, this next card is also very good.
Oh, I love it. Well of Lost Dreams, 4 generic for an artifact. Whenever you gain life, you may pay X, where X is less than or equal to the amount of life you gained. If you do, draw X cards. So let me think this through with Willowdusk. Let's say we do something with Veto. Maybe we hit with a huge Vampire Nighthawk. We gain 10 life. Maybe we can't pay 10, but we can pay as much as we can afford and just draw as many cards as we want.
Yeah.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, that's a great deal. And again, you can leave up any amount of mana. If it's like a big 5, you know, you can just pay for 2 to just draw 2 or whatever. The flexibility is great there. Anyone who's running a life gain deck is probably running this card. So we're all
and let's not forget that, like, we're used to the standard cost of drawing a card to be about 2 mana. Like, most things are calibrated where you pay about 2 mana to draw a card. That's kind of the average when you're dealing with small numbers. This is 1 for 1.
Yeah.
Like, once this is down, like I've spent money on enchantments that let me pay 2 to draw cards.
Yeah.
This is an artifact that lets me pay 1 to draw a card. It's a little bit harder to do, but in the right deck, it's not hard at all. I think I've been underrating this card.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's got to be in life gain, but it's a really great card. It's a must include in most life gain decks, especially because you're usually talking about white when we're talking about life gain decks, and obviously we know about white and drawing cards. In this case, it's green and black. These are 2 pretty good cards pretty good colors when it comes to drawing cards, but that's how good Well of Lost Dreams is, because this is a deck that cares about life gain. We're going to draw a ton of cards from that. Our next card here. Okay, so what we because we're in green black, it's kind of unavoidable to include a couple cards that care about our graveyard, and inevitably some of our good creatures are going to die. This is how I like to play Magic. I always have some kind of recursion going on somewhere because things die, and so yeah, we have this mild kind of graveyard theme going through it with some key cards. So first up, we have oh no, sorry, this is the wrong chainer. Chainer, what's he called?
Chainer Dementia Master?
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's for some reason I wrote Phyrexia. Chainer Dementia Master. Thank you, Sean. 3 black with a 3/3. He's a human minion. Nightmare creatures.
And we can tell by the single eye and the banana shaped body and the blue overalls.
Yeah, that's right. And he just doesn't speak English. It's just a fun.
Banana.
Yeah, there you go. I've never ever seen one of those movies.
I caught a few minutes of one that was in the background in a house with little children in it.
Yeah. This is also today. This is the second time minions have come up, which is really funny. Anyways, nightmare creatures get +1/+1. You pay black. You pay 3 life, and you can put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. That creature is black and is a nightmare in addition to its other creature types. When Chainer leaves the battlefield, you exile all nightmares. It's an older card, but it checks out. It's a great rate when it comes to paying for reanimation. But obviously, if they remove Chainer, we lose all that stuff. But that's okay. And when it comes to the paying the 3 life, obviously we're happy to do that too, right? Like we love that ability with Willowdusk. So Chainer really fits in. Sorry, I'm having like weird chest pains here. Okay. So Chainer's really great for this graveyard theme. And on the opposite side of things, we're paying 3 life with Chainer. Sean, this next card's really good.
Do you mean Phyrexian Delver?
No, I don't know what happened with the
do you
notes
mean
here.
Whip of Erebos?
Yeah.
We're talking Whip of Erebos. 2 black, legendary enchantment artifact. Creatures you control have lifelink. That's amazing for decks that spend a lot of life or have Well of Lost Dreams. And there's an activated ability, 2 black, tap. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. And if it would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else and only as a sorcery. Pretty cool. Bring a creature back, give it lifelink, gain a bunch of life. Now Willowdusk makes something else even bigger.
Yeah, and just give everything we have out already lifelink too. Like obviously that's great. Again, another like kind of auto include in anything that cares about life gain if we have black in it. I'm actually going to read these 2 out in reverse order here, Sean. So first I'm going to read Vanewitch Coven, which is another good little graveyard thing from the new set here. 2 and a black for a 3/3 vampire warlock with menace. We like that. We like that evasion again because if we can, pump up this creature, give it life, like it's pretty nice. But whenever you gain life, you may pay black, and if you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Well, obviously, again, that's just really nice. Things die. We're not working with any kind of special sacrifice deck, although we do have a sack outlet or 2. But it's more of a value one, like it's like a what's it called, Agent of Bolus, like that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But here's where this gets really spicy is we also have Blex in this deck. Blex, Vexing Pest. 2 and a green for a 3/2 legendary pest. Other pests, bats, insects, snakes, and spiders you control get +1/+1. When Blex, Vexing Pest dies, you gain 4 life. Okay, well, sure. Honestly, don't know why I read it. We don't care about Blex the creature. We want Search for Blex. 2 black for the sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put any number of them into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. You lose 3 life for each card you put into your hand this way.
That's 15.
When I first put this card in the deck, I didn't know you got to lose the life. Like this was suggested at Discord, and I was like, "Oh, great! Pay 4, like draw 5, basically, or put a couple good like things into my graveyard if I have any of the like reanimator spells or whatever." No. This thing also loses you the life, so it does both things, right? You mentioned Phyrexian Delver, which is a card I meant to put in the notes here. That's what happened. That card's great. That's one of our reanimator spells, along with Chainer. Search for Blex loads that up while also loading your hand up and also losing up to 15 life if you want it.
I want it.
It's perfect. And here's where actually the Blex part comes in perfectly with Vanewitch Coven and things of that nature. We can use Vanewitch Coven to get Blex back to our hand from the graveyard.
Because in the graveyard,
exactly,
it's a creature.
It's a creature, exactly. So that works out really nicely. And if we do manage to, for some reason, I don't know, reanimate Blex, it's probably not going to happen. But the gaining 4 life is fine if it dies. It's cool. We'll take it, right?
We'll take it.
Insects, though, Blex. You care about insects. It doesn't care about saprolings, but we do make some tokens in this deck too. So why don't you take these two?
Ooh, classic token maker. MacLeod, 3 green, fungus, devour 2, which means when it enters, you can sacrifice as many creatures as you want, and you get 2 +1/+1 counters on MacLeod per creature sacked as it entered the battlefield. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning of your upkeep, make a 1/1 green saproling for each +1/+1 counter on MacLeod. This gets very big. It has to live around the table, but like, man, this is one of those cards where your opponent drops it, puts 10 counters on it. You're like, well, the table goes into conference mode, and it's like, can anyone get rid of that MacLeod before they get 10 tokens out of it? That's something that is we always want it. We always want on our side. Or how about iridescent hornbeetle, 4 and a green, insect, 3/4. At the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 green insect creature token for each +1/+1 counter you've put on creatures under your control this turn. In tandem, the table doesn't get that conference mode for very long. They need an instant, because you could resolve MacLeod, put a ton of counters on, or heck, just with Willowdusk, put a ton of counters on, and then iridescent hornbeetle says, thank you, here's some insects.
Yeah. And this is actually one that Blex does really work with, but I mean, that's just bonus. But both of these creatures are just you're getting so much value out of placing all those counters on whatever it is you're placing them on. You place them on MacLeod, like we were saying, and then just get them all immediately from the Hornbeetle, and then come around and get them on MacLeod. And yeah, you know what? MacLeod does have to make it around the table, so it's a little slow that way, and people are definitely afraid of it. But we've also got a few include some things like Momentous Fall. Right, which is an instant that lets you sack a creature and then draw that many cards. So you can lean a little more into that if you wanted as well with this deck.
And gain life, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
I think it's in the deck. It's just I didn't put it in the notes. But yeah,
you draw cards equal to their power and gain life equal to the toughness. So you can just convert that into more counters on a life linker. With Willowdusk, that card has tons of synergy too.
Tons of synergy. So that's what we're doing. We're making big things. We're gaining a bunch of life. We're cool with losing a bunch of life. That's the great thing about Willowdusk, though. You don't have to lose the life. You don't even have to gain the life if you don't want to. Just do one of them, right? She's very flexible that way. Like, you might draw only the lifelink side of your deck, and that's fine. That's totally fine. You might only draw the other side of your deck, the losing life. That gets a little more dicey, but it's still pretty good, So, but we've included a lot of the lifelink stuff in there to make that. Hopefully, that side of it doesn't really happen. But usually, when we're talking about building a deck, you've got to have an equal so that we draw both, and we want to make sure they work together. But the great thing about Willowdusk is you're totally cool if it's just the one side. Ideally, it's the life gain side, but yeah. This is a deck that, like I said, it came together in a way that I kind of wasn't expecting. I thought this was like a little bit of an on rails deck. I thought it was a little kind of, I don't know. I thought it was like just unexciting, and I am actually very excited by this deck, and I can't wait to play it. And I'm definitely putting it together. So, because there is a lot of flexibility, there's a lot of different ways. Like, I'm going to play this version of it and then see if, do I want to go and kind of, if you check out the Lost Cards, we're going to be talking about some of these other ways that we can kind of go with this commander, and there are a bunch of different ways. So it ends up being a lot of fun. Discord helped a big time on this one. This was a lot of fun. We really went deep on both of these sides of Willowdusk and the synergy going on there. So shout outs big time to our boy Chiefy, Lil Watt, Too Much Do, Micah Eternity's Crafter, Pips Don't Lie, Beppo, Beauregardin, Demir Buffalo, and Groove Chicken in there hard. And then our boy Dan, coming in there kind of later with a lot of really excellent suggestions as well. Thank you big time. Again, check out our Patreon if you want to get in on that Discord and start brewing with us. It's a lot of fun. All right, well, we have talked about our Discord helpers, which means that it is time for the budget report. Okay, so this one's a little bit more on the pricey side of things. I kind of kept a lot of these $5 to $7 cards. I kept a few more than I normally would, with this deck because they were cards, a lot of them that I already had, and I'm like, I'm putting this together in real life, so I want to keep this deck list kind of like that. So
and that's also like where I don't want to create too big of a tangent, but that's just where Commander is headed. Like more and more cards are $5 cards. It's getting a little bit tricky to build on a budget.
The good thing about that is that I think there's a lot of those cards that don't start out as $5 cards. And I mean, it's only good if you're like at the point where like you've collected them from when they were cheaper, obviously, right? Like the same thing happened to like me when I first started. I saw cards that were $10 and I was like, well, I don't have it, but like everyone I knew had one because they'd been, not everyone I knew, but a bunch of people I knew already had them because they drafted that set, so they had them. The same thing goes with some of these. If you bought precons, you're going to have some of these cards anyways. I that's what I did. It's still not crazy expensive or anything. We're talking TCG mid, we're talking about 170, and then the low was like just under $100, between 90 and 100. I saw it also for like mid around 150. So it's not like it's crazy expensive or anything like that.
No.
Most people's decks are probably more than that.
Agreed.
Two cards that really stood out that are expensive. One being the Ozolith. We talked about it last week with Felisa, and and we're talking about it here because if you're talking counters, you're talking Ozolith, and this is a colorless card that goes in any deck that cares about counters. So it makes a ton of sense. The single mana legendary artifact. Whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had a counter on it, put it on the Ozolith, and then you can move it back off the Ozolith onto the thing. I don't need to read it. I feel like at this point, the Ozolith is like, it's pretty. We know what it does. And
another really pricey card.
This next one,
Lifeblood Hydra. I mean, maybe it's not so surprising. This is like $12, $13.
Yeah.
X green 0/0 trample. It enters with X +1/+1 counters on it, and when it dies, you gain life and draw cards equal to its power. Like I am surprised, like you, to find out this is above $10, but I guess we've got. When you think about it, we've got lots of ways to cheat out creatures, make them bigger than we paid for, get it discounts, and it turns into cards. Yeah. So I think it's going to turn into like 10. You're going to get a good return on investment on it. So, yeah. Yeah,
exactly. And no matter what you do with it, whether you just hard cast it for a big amount, a big like 10 mana Hydra, you're going to be happy with it if it dies or whatever. But also you can cast it for 4, make it a 1/1, and then just put Willowdusk counters on it, and then you're really laughing at that point.
Not a May, so be careful how many counters you put on it.
Very, very, very important to know that. Yes. Those were two of the pricier cards. Like I said, there's a couple like that sat around $7. There's even like one or two $9 cards. Like, what's the one that lets things tap as if they had haste? The elixir.
1,000-year
elixir. So that was just reprinted. So I thought it had come down a little bit more in price, but it's still hovering around that like $8-9. So that's kind of stuff that you can cut though. Like I would cut the Ozolith. I would cut Lifeblood Hydra from this. Absolutely, you don't need it. You don't need those cards. They're not linchpins of the deck. Some of the stuff I mentioned before, those are the key linchpins and those aren't the expensive cards for sure.
Yeah.
But if we are talking about pricey cards we didn't run, I mean, it seems like pretty obvious to include Doubling Season.
Whoa, this card is $80.
Like all versions of it? Is the Battle Bond?
I think you can find one for $77. The Battle Bond is $77.79.
It's so funny. I have Doubling Season in a deck or two. I have one copy of it. And sometimes I'm like, 5 mana. You know what I mean? Like I know it's so good, but because you also kind of know it's just going to get killed right away. But obviously, very powerful card. We know about this. We're doubling counters. We're doubling tokens. It's really good. Yeah. And the next card, you can read this next one. Talk about this one.
Yeah, Dark Confidant. Yeah. 1 and a black human wizard. 2/1. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library. Put it into your hand. Lose life equal to its converted mana cost. Greatness. at any cost.
Yeah, it's an all-time classic, and it's an all-time super expensive card, pretty much.
$30.
Still, I mean, 30 is definitely a lot better than it used to be. I remember when this was like a $70, $80 card at some point. But 30 is too much for this deck. Don't worry, you don't need Dark Confidant. Dark Tutelage does just as good a job. Keen, whatever the last thing, Keen Duelist is also great. There's tons of cards that do this kind of thing, and we don't need to worry about it. You don't need to worry about spending $30 for this. So there you go. Willowdusk, Essence Seer. Man, I'll tell you, it's a fun deck. A lot of cool interactions here, making big creatures, getting them in, gaining tons of life. Again, there's like an order that you can play your turns to, but they don't have to go in this one order. It's really fun. It's a really flexible deck, which is what I had a lot of fun in my like testing against AI games. Had a lot of fun doing. It was it kind of played a little bit differently every turn. It was great.
I love that. I mean, it's no surprise we share some deck brewing sensibilities.
Yeah.
It's no surprise that the Commander's Brew decks aren't chock full of tutors, because we're not trying to do the one thing every time and play every game out. A lot of Commander decks want to do the exact same thing. They're tuned to do it and do it great, and that's how they're going to win. But man, I love a deck where you're like, let's see how this deck's going to run tonight.
That's my favorite thing. I love variance, and I love it in the way the decks play out. I've said it many times on this show. It's what stops me from going super hard in one direction. Although we have done that with decks before. Like it's a totally fine and sometimes very fun way to play a deck. But if I can afford it, I'm going to try and include a few different paths to victory. So this one's not even the most varied. Like we're still doing, what the commander says a lot of the time. So, but very fun deck. I highly recommend it, especially again, if you've built a Greven deck and you're like, maybe this aggro over the top aggro thing isn't really working for me. And I didn't love this deck the way I thought I would, which is my experience. I think take a look at Willowdusk. Anyways, remember, check out our sponsors. Check out Wizard Tower if you're in Canada. Hit up TCG for the deck list, the full deck list. Order your cards there if you're in the United States or elsewhere, and support the show that way. We'll be back with some lost cards later this week, and next week with a brand new deck. So we will see you then. Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you love what we're doing, consider supporting the show by going to patreon.com/commandersbrew.
And if you want to get any of the cards from our deck list, go to our TCG Player affiliate link below.
That helps us out too, and for a free way to help us out, consider sharing the show with some friends. Like and subscribe, add a comment or two.
See you later.
Bye.